You may think you know Abraham Lincoln, the tall man, the beard, the face on the $5 bill. But what if I told you that Abraham Lincoln once carried books miles through the woods just to read while other kids slept? And that he had a strange habit of reading the same book over and over, sometimes 10 or 15 times, because he couldn't afford new ones. No school, no money, no powerful family, just one weird obsession with learning that quietly shaped the future of America. Today, we'll uncover the brutal poverty that defined his childhood, the mother who died when he was 9 and how it broke him, the stepmother who saved his life, the failed businesses that left him in debt for 17 years, the depression so severe he had to be watched so he wouldn't kill himself, the woman who rejected him and broke his heart, the political defeats that everyone said would end him, the marriage that was described as a living hell, the son who died in the White House while Lincoln led a nation at war, the enemy who put a bullet in his head, and the one truth about his success that destroys everything we believe about talent and destiny. In this story, you'll discover why Lincoln's greatest strength came from his darkest weakness, why he read the same books obsessively when others collected many, what really happened in his mind during those depression episodes, why his marriage was so painful, how losing elections actually prepared him to save the Union, what the Civil War did to his soul, why he freed the slaves when many in his own party opposed it, and whether a man born in absolute poverty with less than 1 year of formal education could actually become the greatest president in American history, or if we've been told a myth. Because Abraham Lincoln's story isn't just about rising from nothing, it's about staying sane when everything falls apart. It's about leading when you don't feel strong, and it's about the question every struggling person asks in the dark: does persistence actually matter, or is success just for people born into better circumstances? Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a one-room log cabin in Hardin County, Kentucky. His father, Thomas Lincoln, was a farmer and carpenter, barely literate, constantly struggling. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was also illiterate, but known for her gentle nature and intelligence. The cabin they lived in was 14 feet by 18 feet, one room, dirt floor, one window, one door, no glass. The family owned almost nothing. When Abraham was 2 years old, the family moved to another farm in Kentucky at Knob Creek. They were tenant farmers, meaning they didn't own the land. They worked land owned by someone else and gave part of their harvest as rent. This was poverty that modern Americans can barely imagine. No running water, no electricity, no doctors nearby, no schools, no books except the Bible. Children weren't children, they were labor. Abraham started working as soon as he could walk, hauling water, feeding animals, planting crops, chopping wood. His father, Thomas, was known to be stern, sometimes harsh. He believed education was a waste of time for poor boys who needed to work. But Abraham's mother, Nancy, was different. She encouraged Abraham to learn. She told him stories. She valued knowledge even though she couldn't read. This created a tension in young Abraham. His father needed his labor, but his soul craved learning. In 1816, when Abraham was 7, the family moved again, this time to Indiana, to a place called Little Pigeon Creek. They moved because of land title disputes in Kentucky and also because Indiana was a free state, not a slave state. Thomas Lincoln opposed slavery. The family traveled through wilderness to reach Indiana. They lived in a 3-sided shelter, open to the elements, for weeks while Thomas built another cabin. Abraham helped his father clear land, build fences, and plant crops. The work was brutal. The isolation was complete. The nearest neighbor was miles away. Then came the tragedy that would define Abraham's childhood. In 1818, when Abraham was 9 years old, his mother Nancy died. The cause was milk sickness, a disease caused by drinking milk from cows that had eaten poisonous white snakeroot plants. Nancy got sick, suffered for a week, and died. She was 34 years old. Abraham's older sister Sarah was 11, Abraham was 9. Their father Thomas was overwhelmed. For over a year, the three of them lived in that cabin in desperate conditions. Thomas couldn't maintain the farm and care for 2 children. The cabin fell into disrepair. They ate poorly. Abraham later said this period was the darkest of his childhood. Motherless, isolated, working constantly, no school, no hope of anything better. Many children in Abraham's position simply accepted this as their permanent reality. They grew up, became farmers or laborers, repeated the cycle of poverty. But something in Abraham rejected this fate. He started borrowing books from neighbors. In a rural area where most families owned maybe 1 or 2 books, Abraham would walk miles to borrow a book, read it, return it, borrow another. He read by firelight at night after working all day. He read while taking breaks from plowing. He read the Bible, Aesop's Fables, Robinson Crusoe, Pilgrim's Progress, and later books on grammar, mathematics, and law. Here's the strange part. Abraham didn't just read books once. He read the same books over and over, 10 times, 15 times. Some people thought this was because he was slow, but the truth was more profound. Abraham had an extraordinary memory, and he understood that deep understanding comes from repetition, not from shallow exposure to many things. While other people bragged about how many books they'd read, Abraham bragged about how deeply he understood the few books he had. This pattern, learning a few things deeply rather than many things superficially, would define his entire approach to life, politics, and leadership. In 1819, when Abraham was 10, his father Thomas traveled back to Kentucky and returned with a new wife. Her name was Sarah Bush Johnston, a widow with 3 children of her own. This was a pivotal moment in Abraham's life. Sarah Bush Lincoln, his stepmother, recognized something in Abraham that his father didn't see. She saw intelligence, she saw hunger for knowledge, she saw potential. Sarah brought books into the house. She encouraged Abraham to read. She defended him when Thomas wanted him to work instead of study. She treated Abraham not as free labor, but as a child with a future. Abraham later said that Sarah was the best friend he ever had. She didn't give birth to him, but she saved him. This is an often overlooked factor in Abraham's success. One person believed in him when nobody else did. One person protected his education when the whole world said poor boys don't need education. One person saw greatness when everyone else saw a poor farm boy. The formal education Abraham received totaled less than 1 year combined. He attended what were called blab schools, where students recited lessons out loud in unison. He went sporadically, whenever his father could spare him from work, which was rare. But Abraham was teaching himself. He practiced writing by scratching letters in dirt, on wooden boards, on anything he could find. Paper was expensive, pencils were expensive, so he improvised. He practiced arithmetic by solving problems in his head while plowing fields. He memorized entire passages from books and recited them while working. He was building an education in stolen moments, in the margins of a life consumed by survival. By his late teens, Abraham was physically imposing. He grew to 6 feet 4 inches, taller than most men. He was lean but incredibly strong from years of manual labor. He could split rails, lift heavy logs, and outwork grown men. He became known locally for his physical strength. But Abraham wanted more than a life of physical labor. At age 19, Abraham made his first trip beyond his small world. He was hired to help navigate a flatboat loaded with cargo down the Mississippi River to New Orleans. This trip changed his perspective forever. Abraham saw cities, he saw commerce, he saw opportunity beyond subsistence farming, and he saw something that disturbed him deeply: slave markets in New Orleans. He witnessed human beings being bought and sold like livestock, families separated, people in chains. This experience planted a moral opposition to slavery deep in his conscience. In 1830, when Abraham was 21 years old, the Lincoln family moved again, this time to Illinois. Abraham helped his father establish a new farm, then he struck out on his own. He settled in New Salem, Illinois, a small village. He worked odd jobs, store clerk, postmaster, surveyor. He continued reading obsessively. He borrowed law books and began studying law on his own, with no formal training, no law school, no mentor. Here's where the failures start piling up. In 1832, at age 23, Abraham and a partner bought a general store in New Salem on credit. The business failed. His partner died, leaving Abraham with massive debt. This debt, which he called the national debt, took him 17 years to pay off. 17 years of debt from one failed business.
Most people would have declared bankruptcy or run away. Abraham paid every cent. This destroyed his finances for years, but built his reputation for honesty. People started calling him Honest Abe. That same year, 1832, Abraham decided to run for the Illinois state legislature. He lost. His first political campaign was a failure. In 1835, Abraham fell in love with a woman named Anne Rutledge. She was engaged to another man, but that man had left town, and Abraham and Anne grew close. Then Anne got sick with typhoid fever and died. She was 22 years old. Abraham fell into a depression so severe that friends feared he would take his own life. They watched him constantly. He couldn't work, he couldn't function. This was Abraham's first documented episode of severe depression, what we would today call major depressive disorder. He battled this for the rest of his life. In 1836, Abraham ran for state legislature again. This time he won. He served 4 terms in the Illinois state legislature. During this time, he continued studying law. In 1837, at age 28, he became a licensed attorney. He moved to Springfield, Illinois, the new state capital, and began practicing law. As a lawyer, Abraham became known for his honesty, his clear arguments, and his ability to connect with juries. He took cases others wouldn't take. He defended unpopular clients. He charged fair fees. He built a reputation slowly but surely. Then came his complicated relationship with Mary Todd. Mary Todd was from a wealthy Kentucky family. She was educated, cultured, socially ambitious. Abraham was a poor, awkward country lawyer with rough manners and depression. They were opposites. They met in Springfield, began courting, got engaged, then Abraham broke off the engagement on the day they were supposed to marry. He suffered another severe depression. Friends said he looked suicidal. Why did he break it off? Some historians say he panicked about marriage. Others say he felt unworthy of her. Others say he wasn't sure he loved her. Whatever the reason, he devastated Mary and humiliated himself publicly. But eventually, they reconciled and married in 1842. By most accounts, the marriage was difficult. Mary was demanding, temperamental, spent money they didn't have, and suffered from severe mood swings that worsened over time. Abraham was often gone for legal work, emotionally distant, and struggled with his own depression. They had 4 sons together: Robert, Edward, William, and Thomas. But tragedy followed this family. Their second son, Edward, died at age 3 in 1850 from tuberculosis. Mary was devastated. Abraham internalized his grief and kept working. The marriage grew more strained. While building his law practice, Abraham also pursued politics. In 1846, he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. He served 1 term and was not popular. He opposed the Mexican-American War, which was unpopular in Illinois. He didn't run for re-election. His political career seemed over. He returned to Springfield and focused on his law practice. He was a successful lawyer, but politically irrelevant. Most people thought Abraham Lincoln's political career was finished. Then came the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed new territories to decide for themselves whether to allow slavery. This reignited Abraham's opposition to slavery's expansion. He re-entered politics, joining the new Republican Party, which opposed slavery's expansion into new territories. In 1858, Abraham ran for U.S. Senate against Stephen Douglas. They held a series of 7 debates across Illinois that became famous. The Lincoln-Douglas debates showcased Abraham's clear thinking, moral arguments, and rhetorical skill. But he lost the election, another major defeat. At age 49, Abraham had lost multiple elections, failed in business, struggled with depression, and was largely unknown outside Illinois. Then came 1860. The Republican Party needed a presidential candidate. The frontrunners were William Seward, a well-known senator from New York, and Salmon Chase, a former governor of Ohio. Abraham was considered a long-shot candidate, a backwoods lawyer from Illinois with almost no national profile. But Abraham's team ran a brilliant campaign at the Republican National Convention. They positioned him as the moderate candidate, not too radical on slavery, electable in key states, and he won the nomination. The general election was fractured. The Democratic Party split into northern and southern factions. Abraham won the presidency with less than 40% of the popular vote. He didn't even appear on ballots in most southern states. Southern states viewed his election as an existential threat. Before Abraham even took office, 7 southern states seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. By the time Abraham was inaugurated on March 4, 1861, the nation was falling apart. Abraham inherited a nightmare. The Civil War began on April 12, 1861, when Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina. Abraham faced an impossible situation. He had to preserve the Union, manage a war, deal with fractured political parties, navigate international relations, and handle a divided cabinet where several members thought they should be president instead of him. The early years of the war were disasters for the Union. Confederate forces won major battles. Union generals were incompetent or hesitant. Casualties mounted. Northern public opinion turned against the war. Abraham was criticized from all sides. Abolitionists said he wasn't doing enough to end slavery. Conservatives said he was overreaching. Democrats called him a tyrant. The border states threatened to secede. Foreign powers considered recognizing the Confederacy. Abraham handled this pressure by working constantly. He slept little. He read military strategy books at night. He personally reviewed troop movements. He visited hospitals to see wounded soldiers. He responded to letters from ordinary citizens. He struggled to find a general who would fight aggressively. During this time, Abraham's depression intensified. The weight of thousands dying in a war he was leading crushed him. He questioned every decision. He wondered if he was competent to lead, but he never quit. In 1862, Abraham's third son, Willie, died at age 11 from typhoid fever, likely caused by contaminated water in the White House. Abraham was devastated. Mary was shattered, never fully recovering from Willie's death. Abraham had to grieve while leading a nation at war. He had no time to process the loss. He buried it and kept working. On January 1, 1863, Abraham issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that all slaves in Confederate states were free. This was a brilliant political and military move. It reframed the war from preserving the Union to ending slavery. It prevented European powers from supporting the Confederacy. It allowed black men to join the Union Army, adding crucial manpower. But Abraham didn't issue the proclamation because it was popular. It wasn't. Many in his own party opposed it. He issued it because he believed it was morally right and strategically necessary. This is a key aspect of Abraham's leadership. He made unpopular decisions when he believed they were right.
The war dragged on. 1863 brought the Battle of Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle in American history. Over 50,000 casualties in 3 days. Abraham visited the battlefield months later and delivered the Gettysburg Address, one of the most famous speeches in history. It was only 272 words. It lasted about 2 minutes. The main speaker that day spoke for 2 hours. Nobody remembers his speech. Everyone remembers Abraham's. Why? Because Abraham distilled the purpose of the war and the meaning of America into 2 minutes of perfect prose. That ability to clarify complex ideas into simple, powerful language was Abraham's gift. By 1864, the Union was finally winning. General Ulysses S. Grant, whom Abraham had appointed, was pushing Confederate forces back. But the war's toll was staggering. Over 600,000 Americans died in the Civil War, more than all other American wars combined. Abraham carried the weight of every death. He knew that his decisions led to those deaths. He suffered immensely. In November 1864, Abraham won re-election, defeating General McClellan, whom he had fired as commander of the Army of the Potomac. This was validation that the nation still trusted him despite the war's cost. On April 9, 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The war was over. The Union was preserved. Abraham had succeeded. He had saved the nation. He had ended slavery. He had transformed America forever. But 5 days later, on April 14, 1865, Abraham attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington. During the play, a Confederate sympathizer named John Wilkes Booth entered the presidential box and shot Abraham in the back of the head. Abraham never regained consciousness. He died the next morning at 7:22 a.m. He was 56 years old. The man who had survived poverty, the death of his mother, failed businesses, crippling debt, political defeats, depression so severe people feared he'd kill himself, the death of 2 sons, the worst war in American history, and had somehow held the nation together through sheer force of will, was killed by a bullet. So what really made Abraham Lincoln successful? Not talent. Plenty of people were more naturally talented. Not education. He had less than 1 year of formal schooling. Not connections. He came from nothing. Not money. He lived in debt for 17 years. Not confidence. He battled depression his entire life. What made Abraham Lincoln successful was relentless self-education when nobody was watching, ability to endure failure without becoming bitter, capacity to lead when he didn't feel strong, willingness to make unpopular decisions for moral reasons, and an iron will that refused to quit no matter how many times he failed. Abraham read the same books over and over because he understood that depth beats breadth. He paid his debts for 17 years because he understood that character beats convenience. He entered politics after multiple defeats because he understood that purpose beats comfort. He fought depression by working relentlessly because he understood that action beats despair. He freed the slaves despite political opposition because he understood that morality beats popularity. The lesson from Abraham Lincoln's life is not that anyone can become president. Most people won't. The lesson is that your starting point doesn't determine your ending point. The lesson is that formal education is not the same as real education. The lesson is that persistence through failure builds the strength needed for success. The lesson is that deep reading beats shallow reading. The lesson is that paying your debts, even when it takes 17 years, builds trust that opens doors later. The lesson is that depression doesn't disqualify you from greatness if you keep showing up despite it. The lesson is that moral courage is doing what's right when it costs you something. Abraham Lincoln didn't succeed because life was easy. He succeeded because when life broke him down repeatedly, he kept getting back up. Not because he was superhuman, but because he was too stubborn to stay down. The boy who carried books through the woods became the man who carried a nation through its darkest hour. That's the real story. The question is, what will you do with yours?